We heard from one Democrat, Sean Patrick Maloney, who is not for impeachment. We're going to hear from one who says it is time to open this inquiry now, and that is Democratic Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island. He supports opening this inquiry now. He was in the first part of yesterday's hearing as a member of the Judiciary Committee, and he's also a member of House leadership. Congressman, good to see you. So let me start with this.
Good to see you.
Speaker Pelosi, is she closer to letting you guys open this inquiry or farther away?
Well, I'll let Speaker Pelosi speak for herself, but I think, look, yesterday was an important day. The American people heard from the special counsel who said that the president's claim that his investigation was a witch hunt was incorrect. He said no witch hunt, no hoax. The president was not exonerated. And then he walked to the American people through his report in which 5 specific episodes of obstruction of justice were presented. And I think it was an important hearing. We're going to continue to hear from witnesses, obviously Don McGahn, obviously Corey Lewandowski. There's a lot more work to do. I think that the speaker is listening carefully to the members of the caucus. I think people are thinking about this in a very serious way. They're reviewing evidence. They're talking to their constituents. They're trying to make judgments about what they think is right for the country. And I think, you know, each day it feels like there are more people who think the time has come to begin a formal process to consider whether or not the president should be removed from office, an impeachment inquiry. And I think the speaker will continue to reflect kind of the broad consensus in the caucus. We're not there yet, I think, in terms of a majority of our members, but I think more and more people see, based on the president's conduct that's presented in the Mueller report and his subsequent conduct since its release of attempting to obstruct, prevent witnesses from coming forward, preventing documents from being produced, this ongoing effort to cover up.
Let me ask you this. There's sort of a growing chorus of folks on the left who are frustrated by what they think is a slow-acting House Democratic majority when it comes to some of these accountability issues. So, for instance, why did we wait till July 24th to hear from Robert Mueller? Why didn't we hear from him, you know, by May 24th? And look, a lot of this is because you're getting some stonewall of the administration. I get some of that. But in hindsight, do you now look at it and say, boy, the Democrats need to look more aggressive here? Have you let this drag out too long?
No, I mean, I don't think actually that's the reason, Chuck. I think the thing that we're trying to do as Democrats is we're trying to stay focused on 2 things. Moving forward on the agenda that we developed for the people of this country to drive down healthcare costs, to drive down the cost of prescription drugs, to raise family incomes, rebuild the infrastructure of America, and take on the corruption in Washington by passing the biggest anti-corruption bill in decades. We've passed over 200 pieces of legislation, 50 major bills, all responding to the urgent priorities of the American people. While we're doing all of that, all of this work on these important issues, we're also working hard to hold this president accountable. That's happening in 6 committees. There's a lot of litigation ongoing. So there's a lot of stuff happening. We have a responsibility to do both things, but I think some of this stuff, when you have a president who says, I'm going to prevent you in every way from hearing from witnesses and collecting evidence, we're going to have to litigate a lot of this stuff. There's no sort of shortcut. And so I think that's part of the frustration, but we need to keep, I think, moving forward to make sure everyone understands no one in this country is above the law, including the President of the United States.
One final question, because I got to let you go vote. And that is this. The Mueller report came in 2 parts. And he very specifically, part 1 was about the crimes, and part 2 was about the obstruction. Yesterday, you presented the report backwards as far as Mueller was concerned. You started with obstruction, and then we got the crime in the afternoon. Any second thoughts that maybe, considering how more animated Mueller was on the Russia, that maybe starting with the crime itself would have been a better way to lay this out?
Well, I remind you, obstruction is a crime. There were 10 specific instances of obstruction of justice. So I think the Judiciary Committee began because we're the committee that has jurisdiction over impeachment. So I think it made sense for Mr. Mueller first to come to the Judiciary Committee, and he spoke about the president's conduct. So I'm not sure the order mattered. I think we had an opportunity to hear from the special counsel and him walk through all the contents of the report. So I'm not sure it made a difference.
Fair enough. Congressman David Cicilline, Democrat from Rhode Island, one of the questioners yesterday in the Judiciary Committee. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Now,
thanks for having me.
Go vote.
I will.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP and the Meet the Press Mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.